When Rick changed the device's settings and looked into the depths of the cave, he saw the real figures behind the shadows, a few people who had attained knowledge, thinkers who had broken free from their chains and turned toward the light. This scene showed Rick both the dark side of human history and the power of knowledge. However, the frightening aspect of the device was that it not only showed the past, but also put Rick's mind to the test. The shadows in the darkness of the cave came to life in Rick's mind for a moment. It was as if the past was trying to test his perception. Morty touched Rick's shoulder in the eerie silence. "Rick, is this real or is it a dream?" he whispered. Rick paused for a moment. Under the light of the device, Plato's teachings and the darkness of the cave created a storm in Rick's mind. He realized that history was not just about physical events, but also contained human perception, fears, and dark sides. A voice echoed from the depths of the cave, quiet but certain. Those who truly wish to see must also accept the darkness. Rick carefully advanced the scene using the device. Those freed from the chains in the cave were moving toward the light, confronting the shadows. With each step, Rick saw both the bright and dark sides of humanity. Morty was still silent, but his eyes held a mixture of fear and admiration. Before turning off the device, Rick observed the cave one more time and thought, this journey was not just about seeing historical events, but about understanding the dark and unknown aspects of the human mind. Watching Plato's cave, Rick realized once again, history and philosophy converge in the depths of the human soul. The secrets of the past contained not only knowledge, but also fear and wisdom. Rick reactivated the device and opened the scene of World War I. The images appearing on the screen vividly showed the chaos and strategic maneuvers on the battlefronts. However, this scene did not only reflect the movements of soldiers and weapons, it also revealed the secret plans and political intrigues behind the war. Rick's eyes were fixed on the screen. Commanders were looking at maps they had secretly gathered in the trenches, discussing which cities to capture. But these discussions were only superficial. Thanks to the device, Rick could also hear the intentions, fears, and betrayals underlying the conversations. Every word revealed a truth that history books could not tell. Morty watched beside him, trembling. "Rick, there's everyone here dying, but we're just watching." Rick silently shook his head, because the device not only allowed observation, but also made one feel the effects of war and the weight of choices made throughout history. When Rick examined the front line closely, he noticed that certain soldiers and officers did not appear ordinary. Some were making critical decisions that would change the fate of the war, but they were acting under the influence of dark forces outside their own countries. The concept of doors and keys that Rick had learned from the computer came into play here. The critical moments of the war were actually connected to ancient secrets and powers watching over the world. Suddenly, a document appeared on the screen. It contained information about a secret meeting. Rick examined the document carefully. The decisions made at this meeting had changed the course of the war and steered world history in a different direction. However, this secret could only be revealed through the device. Realizing the device's power, Rick moved forward. The explosions of World War I, the screams of soldiers, the commander's dark plans, all of it flowed before Rick's eyes like a film reel of time. Morty grew more tense with each scene, watching Rick's hunger for control and knowledge, and Rick examined the front one last time before turning off the device. He realized that war had not only visible dimensions, but also hidden and dark ones. History was much deeper and more terrifying than what had been learned. Rick reactivated the device and began examining the secret technologies of ancient civilizations. The scenes appearing on the screen revealed a reality far beyond what was in the history books. Massive stone structures, complex mechanisms, and energy lines. Rick was confronted with a level beyond what he had learned in Atlantis. Morty watched alongside him, both fascinated and terrified. Thanks to the detailed vision provided by the device, Rick could see not only the physical development of civilizations, but also their scientific and technological advances. The stone blocks were not just stone, they were complex systems interacting with energy, connected by energy channels reaching underwater, underground, and into the sky. Rick watched a group of ancient engineers and priests in one corner of the screen. They were working on technologies far ahead of their time, but they shared these secrets only with a specific community. This showed that, contrary to human history as it was known, ancient civilizations kept their true powers hidden. A warning appeared on the screen. Secrets are imprinted on the mind and soul of the discoverer. As Rick tried to understand the information provided by the device, he suddenly felt an energy surge. The images bent his perception of time and space, creating a chaotic stream of consciousness in Rick's mind. Morty panicked and grabbed Rick's arm. "Rick, are these technologies real?" Rick's answer was definitive. "Beyond real, Morty. These civilizations were far more advanced than we know." In the next scene, Rick saw devices inside an ancient temple. These were tools that recorded the past and predicted the future. Rick realized that ancient civilizations were not only physically advanced, but also metaphysically advanced. As Rick used the device's power to examine every detail, the secrets of the past and clues about the future became intertwined. What they had learned from Atlantis, scenes from the Renaissance and Plato, now took on a broader meaning. The horrific and unknown face of human history was revealed before Rick's eyes, and as Rick tried to understand the technological secrets of ancient civilizations, he realized once again, these secrets were not just knowledge, but also a combination of power and fear, and every secret had the potential to change the fate of the discoverer. Rick reactivated the device, opening the next scene. This time the screen showed one of the darkest moments in human history, the secret rituals of the Middle Ages and the terrifying underground labyrinths of lost cities. The images made Rick and Morty feel not just like observers, but like witnesses living within that moment. Rick's eyes followed the people advancing through the stone-lined labyrinths. Every corner held the door to a secret room or ritual. Figures lost between shadows and candlelight revealed the ancient power's influence over humanity. Morty, trembling with youthful fear, whispered to Rick, "Rick, is this real?" Rick tried to unravel the mystery behind the secrets, thanks to the detailed images provided by the device. These civilizations had developed not only physical strength and strategy, but also a deep mastery of human psychology and fear. Each ritual was a reflection of the pain and power struggles of the past. Suddenly, an old map appeared in one corner of the screen. The map showed the locations of lost cities and unknown civilizations. Rick deciphered each coordinate on the computer, gathering keys that had been hidden throughout history. But each discovery brought with it a new danger. The shadows of the past seemed to be watching them. Rick opened another scene by using the device more carefully. Battle scenes from the Middle Ages. Soldiers attacked each other in a dark atmosphere, with secret agreements and betrayals reflected on the stage. Rick was not only observing, but also sensing the complex strategies and secret intrigues of the war. Morty's face paled, because the reality presented by the device offered not only information, but also an emotional and psychological experience. A message appeared on the screen: those who witness history's dark side can never return. Rick used the device's power to advance further into the scenes. Lost cities, rituals of unknown civilizations, terrifying secrets hidden throughout history. Each image tested Rick and Morty's perception, continuing to challenge them with both knowledge and fear. And Rick realized once again, history was not just what was learned. The secrets left in the dark were invisible strings that shaped humanity's destiny. The journey that began with Atlantis had now turned into a test to understand the dark side of the past. Rick refocused the device's light on the conquest of Istanbul. This time, the screen showed not only the ships being pulled overland, but also the strategic and psychological genius of Fatih Sultan Mehmet in all its detail. Thanks to the device, Rick delved into the depths of the event. Every command, every glance, every decision was a historical turning point. Morty, still in awe, watched alongside him. Rick paused for a moment, because there was a strange determination and foresight in Fatih's eyes. It was as if Rick was watching not just a commander, but also a strategist who knew the future. The scene of the ships being pulled overland was not just a physical achievement, but a moment where human will and destiny intersected. Then they observed Plato's teachings. The allegory of the cave was engraved in Rick's mind like a real-time experience. Light and shadows were not just a philosophical lesson, but also showed the dark and light sides of the human mind. As Rick discovered the device's power, he began to see other secrets hidden throughout history. critical meetings during World War I, secret strategies, dark decisions. Each image offered both information and a terrifying experience. Rick was now not only a historian, but also a fearful observer. However, he realized the device had an extremely dangerous side. As he watched the past, it was as if the past itself was watching him. For a moment, he felt as if Fatih Sultan Mehmet's eyes were looking at the camera. The drawing in Leonardo's hand seemed to move, as if it recognized Rick for a moment. History was no longer passive. Rick and Morty had become a living part of history. Rick wanted to shut off the device, but the text that appeared at the edge of the screen was permanent. The observer is also the observed. Rick gripped the device tightly and rose from the depths of Atlantis with a chill he had never felt before. Solving the computer's passwords would no longer be enough to uncover the secrets. Places he had to go, events he had to experience, and dangers he had to face awaited him. Rick walked silently through Atlantis' stone-lined halls, holding the device in his hand. The images appearing on the screen were more vivid and frightening than any ordinary history book could describe. The veil of time had been lifted, and with each step Rick was drawn deeper into the past. The device's light shone like a path in the darkness of the room. As Rick watched the secrets of ancient civilizations, he realized that this device not only showed historical events, but also allowed him to feel the flow of time. Each scene created a vibration in Rick's mind, stirring both awe and fear in his heart. The first scene showed an ancient battlefield. Warriors faced each other in a conflict that would determine the fate of a great civilization. But the images reflected not only the physical aspects of the battle, but also the emotions, fears, and weight of decisions at that moment. Rick watched with trembling hands. Every move had shaped the destiny of history. The next scenes showed the construction of Atlantis. Rick observed the moments when massive stones were placed underwater, the fear and determination on the workers' faces, the secret rituals in the shadows of the Guardians. The images were so real that Rick felt as if he were there. Morty trembled beside him, because what they were watching was not just information, but a living experience of time and space. Rick wanted to test the device's powers further. He opened the scene of the Conquest of Istanbul. Fatih Sultan Mehmet's ships being pulled over land, the roar of the soldiers and ships. As Rick watched the event in all its detail, he realized that with each step, he was being drawn into the scenes of history. This observation was no longer passive. At some point, it meant being in the events, experiencing them. Renaissance Florence, Plato's lectures, secret meetings during World War I. Each image showed Rick not only the surface of human history, but also its dark and unknown sides. The past was no longer passive. Rick and Morty had become active witnesses in the flow of time, but Rick realized the device's danger. As he watched, he felt the past becoming aware of him. The eyes of Fatih Sultan Mehmet drifted toward the camera. Leonardo's drawings seemed to be looking at Rick. The veil of time had been lifted, but behind it lurked a secret observer. A single thought formed in Rick's mind. This device didn't just show the past. It made those who lived it part of history. And Rick now understood that there was no way back for him alone. Rick activated the device and opened the next scene, the Conquest of Istanbul. The images were much more vivid and frightening than those described in history books. Fatih Sultan Mehmet's army stood on the shores of the Bosphorus, and ships were being prepared to be carried overland. Rick couldn't take his eyes off the screen. The ships trembling at the water's edge, the coordinated movement of the workers and soldiers, made him feel as if he could feel the fabric of time with his own hands. Morty looked at Rick, trembling beside him. "Are we really seeing this?" he whispered. Rick nodded silently, because the device didn't just let them see, it let them feel. Every step, every breath was a door opening to experience a reality that had been lived throughout history. The scene of ships being moved over land sparked questions in Rick's mind. Why had the great events of human history unfolded in such a secretive and complex manner? This scene involved not only physical strength, but also intelligence and strategy. Thanks to the device, Rick observed every detail. The ropes, the wheels, the soldiers' commands, and the creaking hulls of the ships. But the most frightening aspect of the device was how time directly penetrated Rick's mind. Fatih's eyes sometimes felt like they were looking directly at Rick. It was as if the dark and frightening energy of that moment was seeping into Rick's consciousness. Morty, struggling to cope with his youth and inexperience, realized that Rick's intelligence and attention were also being tested. After watching the scene of ships being pulled over land, Rick scrolled the screen and saw soldiers advancing toward the walls of Istanbul. These scenes reflected not only strategy, but also the human spirit and fear. Rick had ceased to be a passive observer of history and had become an active witness, moving within the events at every step. The lessons he had learned from Atlantis now made sense in the Conquest of Istanbul. Every code he learned from the computer transported the historical reality to a dimension he had never experienced before. In every image, Rick saw the frightening and dark sides of history. Loss and fear were as much a part of this event as success, genius and strategy. As his eyes focused on the screen, Rick realized once again, this device was not just a tool that showed the past, but also a door that revealed the unknown face of human history. Every detail of the Conquest of Istanbul left a lasting impression on Rick's mind, and before turning off the device, Rick examined the scene one last time. The ships walking on land was one of history's most surprising and unknown events, but Rick knew that even greater secrets and darker events still awaited him. Rick adjusted the device's light and opened the next scene, Renaissance Florence. The scene that appeared on the screen was filled with a liveliness Rick had never seen before. People hurried through narrow stone streets, horse-drawn carriages creaked by, colorful frescoes adorned the walls. But what really caught his attention was the intense activity in the workshops and among the artists. Rick's eyes were on Leonardo's workshop. Genius and passion permeated every corner of the room. Thanks to the device, Rick wasn't just observing. He could also feel the ideas and indecision echoing in Leonardo's mind. Morty stood beside him, stunned and silent, because the scenes didn't just show a moment in time. They also revealed the artist's soul. As they watched Michelangelo shape the marble blocks, Rick murmured with deep admiration, "Hands that changed the course of human history." Each hammer blow shaped not only the marble, but also the foundations of human culture. However, the device's frightening aspect directly affected Rick's feelings and thoughts. The creative fervor of the Renaissance and the political darkness of the era created a wave of tension in Rick's mind. The curtain of time had been lifted, and Rick could feel both the light and the shadow of the past. People wandering the streets seemed to be celebrating the birth of art and science, but Rick noticed an old shadow. An unknown figure was silently watching him from the street corner. Rick's instincts were immediately alerted. The device didn't just show the past, it also seemed to sense the viewer. Rick carefully advanced the scenes using the device. Meetings in Florence, artists exchanging ideas, secret documents in libraries. Every detail revealed both the grandeur and the dark side of history. In each scene, Rick realized how far humanity could think ahead, but also how fragile it was. Morty quietly approached Rick. "Rick, are we really experiencing this or are we watching it?" he whispered. Rick paused for a moment, took a deep breath and continued watching the figures slowly walking through the streets of Florence under the device's light. This journey was a door opening, not only to history but also to the depths of the human soul. After observing the birth of the Renaissance, Rick realized once again, every discovery revealed both the known and unknown faces of human history. Every step tested Rick and Morty's courage, as much as it unraveled the secrets of the past. Rick adjusted the device's light again to reveal the next scene, Plato's cave. The images transported Rick's eyes to ancient Greek lands. The cave was dark, illuminated only by a small beam of light. People sat chained to the walls, able to see only the shadows in front of them. Thanks to the device, Rick wasn't just observing the scene. He could also sense the perception in the minds of the chained people. As he looked at the shadows, he could deeply understand how they misperceived the world and reality, their fear and helplessness. Morty, with his youthful self beside him, looked at Rick with concern. Because this scene was not just a philosophical allegory, it also revealed a dark and manipulated aspect of the human mind. Each folder was like a key that took Rick to a world forgotten throughout history. When he cracked the first code, a tiny light flickered in the corner of the screen. This light gave a clue about the location of the world's first civilization. On the map, beyond the known regions of Mesopotamia, the silhouette of a massive city hidden in the desert appeared. But this city wasn't just made of stone and sand. The symbols appearing on the screen indicated that this was also a surprisingly advanced civilization in terms of technology. Rick picked up his pen and compared the coordinates on the screen with his old maps. This place did not match any archaeological discovery. It was as if world history had never seen this civilization. A wave of excitement and fear rose in Rick's heart, because every discovery brought him closer to another unknown secret. But at the same time, a more dangerous game was beginning. In the next folder, a different map appeared. This time, a small dot flickered in the middle of the ocean, Atlantis. Rick's mind was in turmoil. He realized that Atlantis was not just a legend, but a real place according to the computer's data. But knowing the map alone was not enough to get there. Rick had to see it with his own eyes, discover the ancient secrets for himself. Another detail that caught Rick's attention was the hidden symbols under each folder. These symbols revealed new coordinates and the locations of historical events only when deciphered. As Rick solved each code, not only did a physical place emerge, but also forgotten corners of history. The cities of the first civilizations, ancient ritual sites, unknown temples, each one was like a bridge between the history the world knew and the history it didn't know. Rick had only one thought in his mind: these secrets could change everything humanity knew and didn't know. And this change hung by a thread so thin it was invisible to the eye. Every wrong step could affect not only Rick's fate, but the fate of the entire world. A warning appeared on the screen: find the keys, open the doors. But remember, every door you open makes it impossible to turn back. Rick's fingers trembled on the keyboard. This computer was not an ordinary information archive, but a guide to time and space. And Rick knew that in the places this guide took him, he would not only see history, he would face history's terrifying and unknown face. Rick's eyes stopped at a point on the map: Atlantis. The depths were calling him, and Rick knew he couldn't ignore the call. Before taking his first step, he took a deep breath and surrendered himself to the dark embrace of the unknown. Rick projected the coordinates provided by the computer onto the laboratory's holographic map. A point in the middle of the ocean pulsed as if alive: Atlantis. The lights appearing around the map showed Rick the steps of the path he must take. This was not just a map, but a compass guiding him through time and space. Morty stood anxiously beside Rick. Rick tried to put on his usual sarcastic attitude, but he couldn't hide the dread that filled him. Atlantis? Does it really exist? Morty muttered. Rick prepared for the sea voyage without answering. When they reached Atlantis, the sea was unexpectedly silent. It was as if a power beneath the water was absorbing every sound from the outside world. Rick put on his diving gear and underwater armor, taking Morty with him. As they took their first steps, enormous structures appeared beneath the water. Stones, strange symbols, and mechanisms crafted with unknown technology. Atlantis was not a legend, but a real city before them. The first thing that caught Rick's attention were the shadows moving between the city's structures. They were human-shaped but drawn with strange lines, as if observing Rick and Morty. Rick's instincts warned him, this city is still alive. As they advanced deeper into Atlantis, codes appeared on their screens. The clues he had learned from the computer were enough to open the doors here. Each door carried him into a more unknown area, and with each step, the roar rising from the depths of the sea filled Rick's ears. When Rick opened a door, a huge library appeared before him. Books and tablets held the secrets of Atlantis, the history of lost civilizations, ancient technologies, unknown rituals. Rick entered using the computer's codes and began scanning the pages one by one. Just then, a shadow moved swiftly from beneath the water. Morty clung to Rick in panic. Rick, maintaining his usual composure, shone his light on the shadow. The shadows were Atlantis's ancient guardians, mystical beings created to protect the city's secrets. Rick deciphered the symbols with his pen and device and dispelled the shadows. But with every step, a whisper came from the city's dark depths. This is not your world. You cannot return. As Rick and Morty advanced toward the heart of Atlantis, the city grew increasingly bizarre. Spaces warped, the rhythm of time shifted, and the shadows took on different shapes with every movement. Rick realized it was impossible to leave without decrypting the codes on the computer. Atlantis's doors, secrets, and dark shadows drew Rick in. Every folder he had seen on the computer had now become a living reality. Rick was ready to learn the information hidden throughout history, but the frightening events that confronted him at every turn tested his courage. And when Rick took his first serious step toward the heart of Atlantis, the whispers began to echo not only in the water, but also in his own mind. There is no turning back now. As Rick advanced into the depths of Atlantis, he encountered not only physical structures, but also echoes of the past. The faint screams coming from between the stone walls turned into melodic but terrifying tones in Rick's ears. These sounds whispered the pains and secrets of ancient civilizations. Morty, eyes wide, moved forward silently. Rick deciphered the symbols on the stones while searching for the source of the screams. Each stone held encrypted information, lost kingdoms, ancient wars, forgotten rituals. Each solution opened a door, revealing the next secret. Rick followed the coordinates he had learned on the computer and reached an ancient temple. At the temple's entrance, massive stone columns rose up. The symbols carved on them weren't just readable. They seemed to send messages directly to Rick's mind. Each symbol told of the unknown powers, technologies, and terrible secrets of ancient civilizations. When Rick touched a stone panel, a mechanism inside the wall activated. The stones slowly slid apart, revealing an ancient door. Upon entering, he found himself in a huge hall. Every corner of the hall contained ancient technologies, unknown devices, and strange light reflections. But the most frightening thing was the shadows rising from the lines, stretching across the stone floor. Rick realized these were not just images. They were ancient spirits or energies hidden in the stones, echoes carrying the pains and secrets of the past. As Rick's hands trembled while examining the old devices, a wave of screams suddenly pierced the laboratory's silence, emanating from the floor. This scream signaled the presence of one of Atlantis' ancient guardians. Rick quickly continued using his device to decipher the symbols. Each solution altered the shadow's direction, but couldn't stop them entirely. Morty stood beside Rick in an eerie silence. With each step, the screams of the stones grew clearer, and the lost secrets of ancient civilizations turned into real fear in Rick's mind. Atlantis was no longer just a city. It had become a living, breathing nightmare. Rick decided to proceed toward the next door to unlock every folder on the computer. With each step, the stones he encountered reminded him that ancient civilizations had left behind not only knowledge, but also a deep fear and wisdom. The depths of Atlantis taught Rick that the secrets of the world had not only a physical dimension, but also a spiritual one. And listening to the cries hidden in the stones, Rick understood once again. The gates of Atlantis held both wisdom and a curse for anyone who wanted to enter the depths of its secrets. In one of Atlantis's stone-lined deep halls, Rick discovered an astonishing device related to the ancient civilization's technology. At first glance, it looked like a simple camera, but the metal plates and complex symbols on it showed that it was no ordinary device. Remembering the instructions in the camera folder on the computer, Rick realized that this device was a tool for viewing the past. Rick examined the device carefully. A strange light emanated from the depths of the lens. When he turned it on, the walls of the room slowly began to become transparent. A film reel appeared before his eyes. Forgotten events of history flowed vividly, as if he were living within time itself. Rick's heart raced. The images provided by the device not only narrated the events, but also allowed Rick and Morty to experience those moments firsthand. The first image showed the days when Atlantis was being built. Huge stones were slowly being placed into the depths of the water. Fear and awe were evident on the workers' faces. Rick opened the next scene, the Conquest of Istanbul. Fatih Sultan Mehmet's ships being pulled over land, the shaky images of soldiers and ships appearing at the water's edge. Thanks to the device, Rick could watch those moments in all their detail. Morty leaned against Rick in shock and fear. Rick was no longer just an observer. He was now a witness standing in the shadow of history. The next images took them to Renaissance Florence. Ideas born in Leonardo's workshop, Michelangelo's hands working on blocks of stone. Moments that changed the fate of humanity flowed before Rick's eyes like a film reel. Rick, bored with his usual interdimensional experiments, had turned his attention to events in the back of his laboratory that he hadn't touched in years. At the bottom of the lab, a rusty case covered in a thick layer of dust caught his eye. This pile of iron, which had been sitting there for years, looked like ordinary scrap metal, but Rick's gaze immediately fell on the small metal plaque on the front of the case. 1950. Project Archaic. The writing had faded over time and due to rust, but it was clearly no ordinary computer. As Rick cleaned the case, old state symbols, obscure codes, and dangerous warnings carved into the side emerged. This device was clearly one of the state's most secret projects. Rick connected the cables, power sources, and input ports in his lab to start the device. The metal case opened noisily, dusty due to its dirty fans, and a dim green light emanated from inside. What stood before him was a product of intellect made before the digital age, yet seemingly beyond it. When the screen lit up, the only thing that greeted him was folder directory, a simple black background and green phosphorescent letters. But the folder names were not reassuring. Titles such as Secret, Depths, Gates, Atlantis, Firsts, Camera, and Forbidden were listed one after another. Rick tried to maintain his usual sarcastic attitude, but he couldn't hide the chill inside him. This computer was no ordinary archive. It was a vault that held not only history, but the dark secrets of the world. Moreover, there was one more detail that caught his attention. This computer was not connected to the internet, nor could it be. This meant that modern intelligence networks could not track this device. That's why the world's secret powers were still frantically searching for this computer. Summoning his courage, Rick opened the Firsts folder. Hundreds of encrypted files appeared inside. Each file contained a date, a symbol, and a mark. When he tried to open them, incomprehensible text appeared on the screen, followed by a single word, key. Rick ran his own algorithms to crack it. But with each code broken, strange sounds began to rise from the screen. It was as if an organic whisper, not digital, was coming from inside the safe. As the code was decrypted, maps began to appear in one corner of the screen. These were no ordinary maps. Marked points on them indicated the world's most unknown places. The first thing that caught Rick's eye was a red dot in the depths of the ocean that read Atlantis. Then, markers appeared in other corners of the map, the shadowy regions of Mesopotamia, the peaks of the Himalayas, a dot in the depths of the Sahara Desert, and even a marker pointing towards the heart of Istanbul in Turkey. A warning appeared at the edge of the screen. Warning: every folder is a door. When each door opens, darkness awakens. A faint smile spread across Rick's face, but the fear inside him grew even stronger, because as he tinkered with this computer, he understood. What was written here was not just information. Each one was a door opening to another place, and Rick was ready to discover the secrets behind those doors. But with every step, he sensed that something darker awaited him. Rick appeared to ignore the warning that appeared on the computer screen, but the words echoing in his mind deeply disturbed him. Every folder is a door. Every time a door opens, the darkness awakens. This message could have been a simple scare tactic, but Rick's scientific instincts told him it was something more. He randomly selected one of the folders, the Depths. When the file opened, the screen suddenly flashed. Green letters flickered like water waves. Muffled sounds began to emerge from within, incomprehensible whispers, as if rising from miles below. The image gradually became clearer. A map of the ocean depths had appeared. However, this map bore no relation to the underwater maps known in the modern world. Here, unknown cities, enormous labyrinths, and symbols that the human mind would struggle to comprehend were marked. The note at the top caught Rick's attention. Atlantis. The first civilization, the first loss. Rick excitedly closed the folder and moved on to the next one, Gates. This time, hundreds of symbols appeared on the screen. Some resembled ancient Mesopotamian writing, while others looked like symbols from completely unknown languages. But in the middle of them all was a single symbol, interlocking circles as if representing the gates of different dimensions. Below it was a chilling line. Once the doors open, they cannot be closed again. Rick ignored this message and continued to decipher the files. However, with each solution, a new map point appeared beside the screen, marking mysterious locations around the world. A temple of light buried in the Himalayan glaciers, a lost stone city in the depths of the Sahara, a giant mechanical tower rising into the sky in the middle of the South American rainforest. But what caught his attention most was the mark for Istanbul in Turkey. There was only one word written there: conquest. Rick's curiosity grew. This computer contained not only ancient civilizations, but also turning points in history. The conquest of Istanbul, the birth of the Renaissance, World War I, all were stored in these folders, all waiting for a key. Then the screen flickered. This time he hadn't given any commands, but the computer opened a new folder on its own. Camera. Rick's eyes widened. This folder was different from the others. When he opened the file, only one line appeared: the eye that sees the past. The observer is also observed. Rick tried to shake off the chill that had overtaken him and attempted to shut down the computer. But the power button didn't respond. The text on the screen began to flicker phosphorescently. Then the letters slid one by one into a single sentence. You've begun. The doors have opened. The air in the lab grew heavy. Rick had spent years in science, had seen universes, encountered countless creatures. But the feeling that filled him at that moment was different. This computer was no ordinary machine. It was an ancient key that cast a shadow over the world. And Rick, whether he wanted to or not, had turned the first gear of that key. As Rick's fingers danced across the keyboard, the wind howled outside the laboratory windows. The message on the screen still flashed. You've started. The doors are open, Rick muttered to himself, but the unease inside him was louder than the storm outside. The computer not being connected to the internet was a huge advantage, but it also revealed a frightening truth. If this device was really a government project from the 1950s, today's methods would be useless in tracking it down. That's why all the secret organizations and intelligence agencies in the world were still searching for this machine. Rick understood this. The lab lights flickered. A new warning appeared on the screen. There are people watching you outside. Rick looked out the window suspiciously. He couldn't be sure if he saw shadows moving in the dark corners of the garden or if his mind was playing tricks on him. But his instincts told him something. From the moment this device started working, it had flashed like a signal flare. The forces searching for it had now turned their attention here. As he continued browsing through the folders, Rick's eye caught a small file labeled Intelligence. When he clicked on it out of curiosity, dozens of faded reflections of logos appeared on the screen. CIA, MI6, KGB, Mossad, and symbols of shadowy organizations he had never heard of before. Beneath them was a short sentence. They're all searching. They don't know. You found it. Rick couldn't figure out who the sentence belonged to. The person who wrote this message might have been a secret engineer who developed this machine years ago, or perhaps an even more unknown power. But one thing was certain: he was now part of this game too. Suddenly a high-pitched hum rose from inside the device. New coordinates appeared on the screen in red letters. The dot flickered in the middle of the ocean. Atlantis. The text below the map was frightening. The depths are calling. A plan began to form in Rick's mind. Each folder was not just information, but also an invitation. To unlock the secrets on the computer, it wasn't enough to just see the passwords. One had to go there and touch those places. And Rick was determined to open those doors. But the noise outside intensified, like the sound of approaching footsteps. For a moment, Rick saw shadows in front of the laboratory door. It was as if men dressed in black, their faces unrecognizable, were watching him. On the computer screen, one more sentence appeared. They're coming. Rick tried to shut down the device quickly, but none of the buttons responded. The text on the screen remained fixed, the map clearly visible in the center. If someone really did enter the lab, it would be easy for them to see the machine's secret. And for the first time, Rick felt he wasn't alone in this game. Someone in the darkness had already begun tracking his movements. Rick took a deep breath in the corner of the lab. Each folder he opened on the computer seemed to hold a clue. When he opened the first folder, the screen suddenly flickered. Green phosphorescent letters appeared one after another. The first civilization, lost cities, hidden kingdoms. Rick's eyes widened. Regions he had never heard of before, regions not marked on any maps, were appearing. Knowledge unravels the threads of fate, but pulling the threads can disrupt the balance. Rick's heart began to race. Unraveling the secrets of Atlantis, watching the conquest of Istanbul, the Renaissance, Plato's philosophy, lost civilizations, and the hidden details of wars. It was all like pulling on the invisible strings of the universe. Morty clung to Rick's shoulder, because now it wasn't just the past, but cosmic forces were watching them too. As Rick held the device, he felt it for a moment. Atlantis' energy, the powers hidden throughout history, and ancient secrets formed a framework that kept the universe in balance. Breaking this framework could endanger the past, the present, and the future. The scenes appearing on the screen created chaos in Rick's mind. Historical events, ancient technologies, and secret rituals came together to form a cosmic knot. Rick realized that the secrets he had discovered affected not only human history, but also the universe's destiny. Morty looked at Rick with fear and admiration. "Rick, did we really change these things?" Rick took a deep breath under the light of the device. "Morty, maybe we think we're just watching everything, but the balance of the universe is very delicate, and we're pulling its strings without realizing it." Before turning off the device, Rick realized once more every secret they had uncovered, starting with Atlantis, touched the universe's destiny plan, shook the cosmic balance, and crowned Rick and Morty's experience with both knowledge and fear. This journey meant not only learning about the past, but also lifting the veil of the universe's secrets. Rick and Morty turned off the device's light and took a deep breath. Throughout their journey, they had seen the secrets of Atlantis, ancient civilizations, the conquest of Istanbul, the Renaissance, Plato's cave, and the hidden aspects of World War I. Now, the impact of all these events stood before their eyes as both a mental and emotional burden. Morty looked at Rick, still trembling. "Rick, did we really live through that? Or was it all a dream?" Rick silently placed the device on the table and thought long and hard. The energy of Atlantis, the images of the past, lost civilizations, and cosmic balance, each had blurred the line between reality and dream. Before turning off the device, Rick reviewed their experiences one last time. Every secret, every discovery, had taken them one step deeper into both wisdom and fear. The ancient secrets of Atlantis, the strategies of the conqueror, the genius of Leonardo, the teachings of Plato, and the hidden aspects of wars. All of it flowed through Rick's mind like a film reel. Morty whispered again, "Rick, if this is a dream, why does everything feel so real?" Rick picked up the device from the table and looked at Morty as he replied, "Morty, reality is shaped by perception and consciousness. Maybe we are dreaming, but we will never forget an experience as real as this dream. And maybe we experienced everything, but we thought it was a dream to protect ourselves." When Rick turned off the device's light, everything fell silent. But in Rick and Morty's eyes, there were deep traces of the journey they had experienced. The journey stretching from Atlantis to lost civilizations, to the darkest moments in history, and the veil of cosmic secrets, had tested them with both knowledge and fear. Rick took a deep breath and smiled at Morty. "Morty, maybe the real secret isn't whether what we saw and felt was real. What matters is how much this experience changed us." Morty slowly nodded. "Rick, this was really scary, but somehow amazing." And as Rick picked up the device from the table, he thought once more, history, the past, and cosmic secrets. When they all came together, they could be both dream and reality, and Rick and Morty learned and feared every moment they lived. But most importantly, this journey had changed them forever. Rick also examined the movements of the soldiers climbing the walls and the panic of the enemy observers, with the details provided by the device. There was an influence of hidden forces in this scene. Rick began to decipher the plans of these forces with the secrets he learned from the computer. At every step, history was filled not only with visible events, but also with unknown and hidden ones. Suddenly, an old note appeared on the screen. "The gates of destiny open to the brave, but one must carry both wisdom and fear at the same time." Using the device's power, Rick observed all of Fatih's decisions and every movement of his army. In the scene where the ships were transported over land, Rick saw details not mentioned in history books: the soldiers' indecision, the balance of the ships, small but critical mistakes, and Fatih's determination. Every detail completed a puzzle in Rick's mind. Morty was still watching silently. Rick glanced at Morty for a moment and whispered, "Morty, history isn't just events. It's a combination of choices and fate." Rick examined the scene one last time before turning off the device. Fatih's strategy, the influence of powers hidden in the shadows, and the flow of history once again showed Rick the importance of secrets hidden throughout history. The journey, starting from the secret doors of Atlantis and extending to the most critical turning points in history, had become both an educational and frightening experience for Rick and Morty. As Rick shut down the device, a thought crossed his mind. Every major event that shaped human history always involved hidden forces and unknown secrets. And Rick was now not just an observer, but a living witness to history. Rick reactivated the device and swiped the screen. The next scene showed the remains of lost civilizations rarely mentioned in history books. The images revealed maps of ancient cities and the complex structures of unknown cultures in Rick's mind. Starting from the depths of Atlantis, exploring the mysterious cities forgotten by time was turning into a new adventure for Rick and Morty. Morty looked at Rick, trembling beside him. "Rick, these people and cities here, we never knew," Rick replied without taking his eyes off the screen. "Morty, history isn't just written in books. Sometimes the greatest secrets are hidden in the shadows and forgotten places." Rick began examining the lost cities through the device. Massive stone structures, unknown technologies, and complex energy grids appeared before his eyes. These civilizations were filled with secrets that shaped human history, but were never documented. Rick pursued every detail. Symbols on stones, ancient rituals, and secret passages. Each one was a clue. Suddenly, a warning appeared in the corner of the screen. Some secrets are revealed only in the minds of the brave. Rick noticed a strange device in one of the lost civilizations. It was a variant of the device he had found in Atlantis that showed the past, but it had more advanced technology. Rick quickly set out to figure out how the device worked. Morty stood beside him, stunned and frightened, because the device's power revealed both the past and unknown forces at the same time. As Rick carefully used the device to unravel the secrets of the lost civilization, the ground suddenly shook. Images shifted, time and space warped. With each step, Rick discovered both the terrifying and the wise aspects of civilizations. Morty clung to Rick, trembling. "Rick, is this real? Or is it a dream?" Rick took a deep breath. Under the device's light, the lost cities revealed not only a physical dimension, but also a spiritual one. The journey that began in Atlantis had now turned into a test to unravel the unknown secrets of lost civilizations. After examining the remains of lost civilizations, Rick realized once again, history was not just about known events. Unknown cities, secret rituals, and ancient technologies held invisible threads that shaped humanity's destiny. Rick reactivated the device and reached Atlantis's deepest and most secret chamber. This section was far more terrifying and complex than anything he had seen before. Ancient symbols glowed on the walls, and strange beams of light moved across the floor. Rick adjusted the device's light to begin unraveling this veil of mystery. Morty whispered to Rick, trembling beside him, "Rick, this place is so strange." Rick nodded silently. "Morty, this is the heart of Atlantis. The secret hidden here contains all the wisdom and darkness of civilization." As Rick examined the details provided by the screen, he realized that the secrets of Atlantis were not limited to physical structures. Ancient civilizations had stored their knowledge and power in energy lines, stone symbols, and special rituals. Each solution revealed a new gateway, a new piece of information. Suddenly, an ancient inscription appeared on the screen. "Those who seek true wisdom must see both light and shadow." Rick tried to decipher the inscription's meaning using the device. Each symbol contained ancient wisdom, and at the same time a frightening warning. Atlantis's final secret brought not only knowledge but also great power and responsibility. Morty watched silently beside Rick. With each step, both awe and fear grew. Rick opened a passage with the device's light. This passage led to Atlantis's deepest energy chamber. The chamber was surrounded by a giant sphere, and within it all the energy of the ancient civilization was concentrated. Rick examined the sphere using the device, and realized the powers of the ancient civilization that shaped world history and destiny. However, the chamber's energy was terrifying. The light and shadows emanating from the sphere created frightening images in Rick's and Morty's minds. Atlantis's final secret was not just knowledge, but also a labyrinth that tested the human spirit and courage. Rick took a deep breath and directed the device's light into every corner of the room. The secrets of Atlantis were filled with both wisdom and darkness. When Rick solved this final secret, he realized all the connections and powers that had been hidden throughout history, and before turning off the device, Rick thought once more. Atlantis' secrets shaped not only the past but also the future and the destiny of humanity. This journey had been an experience filled with both knowledge and fear for Rick and Morty. Rick reactivated the device and continued observing the past. But he now realized that watching each scene was not only about gaining knowledge, but also carried a mental and emotional burden. From Atlantis to the Conquest of Istanbul, from the Renaissance to lost civilizations, each image tested Rick and Morty's psychology, both expanding and terrifying them. Morty, still young and timid, was beside him. Rick, seeing all this, it's scary sometimes. Rick silently held the device and watched the scenes it provided. The images no longer just showed events. They also resonated in Rick's mind, triggering his emotional responses. As Rick tried to decipher the information provided by the device, he suddenly realized historical events were not just being observed. The viewer was becoming part of the events themselves. Ferti's strategies, Leonardo's genius, Plato's philosophy, all of them were being processed as experiences in Rick and Morty's consciousness. A warning appeared on the screen. Those who see the secrets of the past also carry the future. Be prepared to pay the price. Rick continued to use the device carefully. The images now showed not only history, but also the dark and unknown sides of humanity. The horrors of war, the mysteries of lost civilizations, the dangers of ancient technologies. All of it weighed heavily on Rick and Morty. Morty asked Rick, trembling, "Rick, solving all these secrets, will it hurt us?" Rick replied, clutching the device tightly in his hand. "Morty, knowledge is power, but all power comes at a price. Seeing the past means not just learning, but feeling and carrying it." Rick observed Atlantis's final secret once more. As the device's light reflected the energy and chaos of the past throughout the room, Rick and Morty felt both mesmerized and terrified. History was no longer a passive source of information for them. It had become a living, constantly interacting reality. Before turning off the device, Rick realized once more, seeing the past was a great power, but it also brought great responsibility. This journey had been both an intellectual and psychological test for Rick and Morty. This experience, starting from Atlantis and extending to the deepest secrets of history, would change their perception and courage forever. As Rick and Morty traveled through history with the images provided by the device, Rick realized that they were not only uncovering the secrets of human history, but also tampering with the cosmic balance of the universe. Unraveling the secrets of Atlantis, ancient technologies, lost civilizations, and critical events of the past was unexpectedly shaking the balance of the universe. Morty whispered timidly, his youth evident. "Rick, it's like we're messing something up." Rick watched intently, clutching the device tightly in his hand. Indeed, each scene not only showed the past, but also seemed to interfere with the delicate fabric of time and space. The device seemed to connect the past with the present, linking Rick and Morty's actions to the fate of the universe. Rick noticed a warning from an ancient civilization about the future on the device's screen.